Okay, guys, I've shared with you all my friends' favorites from Capital Audiofest 2024. Now it's my turn. 2 pages of notes coming. Stay tuned. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a little bit of a long video because I've got 2 pages of notes. But more importantly, I think this is going to be one of my more favorite wrap-up videos because as I've gained more acumen over the years going to these shows, I realized more and more that it's really not so much about the gear and what you hear in the room. I'm going to highlight a lot of those rooms that do stand out on those metrics, and there were quite a few. So that's going to be part of this. But so much value of these shows comes from other things. And me being behind the scenes, if you saw my last video, doing presentations, helping running a room, and actually being part of the planning ahead of time, gave me some insights that I'm going to share with you that I think are even more important takeaways than whatever you heard in the room, wherever you sat, whatever song they're playing at whatever volume. This is going to be a much more, I think, valuable video and something that I'm evolving to more and more with my coverage. Because shout out to Gary Gill for t-shirt and a great show. I mean, this show is phenomenal. It's become one of my favorites, and it just keeps getting better and better. All the great brands are there for the most part, but it's not too big to digest like an Exponent or a Munich. So congested in some of those situations that you get overwhelmed and you feel rushed. I did not get to go to all the rooms, so keep that in mind as you're listening to my favorites. If I didn't get to go to the room, it was not an indication of I don't like that room. There are some times when I will avoid rooms that aren't my favorites and focus on more, but this is not one of those videos where you can digest, or coverages where you can dissect it and think that I don't like a certain room because I didn't get into it. I just didn't have enough time because I was giving like 6 hours of presentations plus during this weekend. But it gave me, as I mentioned, some insights and some things that are really takeaways that you don't get with my normal wrap-up videos and most people in general. And really, on that end, I wanted to apologize because normally I'm known for doing daily wrap-ups at the end of each show in my hotel room. But as I started doing this, I think it was the first show after COVID, the home entertainment show in, I think it was Long Beach at that time. And I was like the only press there, certainly the only one back then that does YouTube. I think there was AV Showroom still doing stuff back then. I don't even know if they went to that show, maybe so. But it was really just us two in terms of YouTube content. Now, at this show, it was tremendous how many YouTubers are out there. But in any case, I have my own unique style of coverage that you guys know about, and I usually do daily wrap-ups at the end of the day. But because of one of my first takeaways, all the great friends I've met through this channel, all the industry people, all the things that now, after hours, I get to participate in and enjoy. I just don't have time. I'm not in my room alone like I was that first year after COVID at that The Home Entertainment Show to do those wrap-ups anymore. And again, some of these after-hour things and the things I learn about the people are more valuable than sometimes just going to the showroom. So I'm doing it not only because I enjoy it and hanging out with you guys, meeting many new friends, but also industry people. It gives me insights on their business and things that I can provide to you as value, either in the public space or in my membership section. So just an FYI. The people, though, new friends I made, phenomenal. And if you saw my dinner second night, it was mostly people other than Doug that I've met through the channel. Bob, Pete the Greek, and then Mike with Unique Home Audio. And just a ton of people that I've met through this channel, and now I can consider close friends, highest quality people. So that's why I'm not doing daily wrap-ups alone in my room anymore. That's one of the key takeaways. Never feel afraid to come up and say hi, join the crew. I'm always welcoming. You know, I always have time for you guys. But one of the things I wanted to go and talk about is not just my friends. I wanted to talk about some vendors. Behind the scenes, I got to see what it was like talking with Mike Sweck months before this show, helping him kind of navigate some issues and questions and advice he wanted to get from me on speakers to carry, how to set it up, and all these kind of things with the Bach, and actually participating during the show. But I got to see how a lot of vendors, all the work that they have to put in ahead of time for these shows, appreciated it a lot more now that I got to see firsthand and actually be part of that. And also how other vendors react to other vendors and helping each other out. And on that end, I want to give a special shout out to a couple of companies right off the bat, award winners, just because they are team players. They are the type of people I would endorse wholly. Not only do they have great products, but now I got to see how they are behind the scenes, helping other companies out and rooms out. Want to give shout out #1 awards right off the bat to people like Viablue, who I also represent. Let me go ahead and get that out the way. I do represent them. Sold a lot of stuff to some of my members already. Reach out to me if you're interested. But independent of that, I started as a customer of theirs, and now I am so much more comfortable representing them as I've learned more and more over the years. They just step up in any situation to help another room, whether they need cables, cable lifters, vibration control. So a big shout out to them. And also VAC, Kevin with VAC. That's a brand that Mike Sweck with Unique Home Audio, who had that room that I was doing the presentations in, he doesn't even represent VAC. And Kevin stepped up to give him tube amps, low power tube amps. Part of the theme of that room was to show that not only electrostatics can do bass, but also low power tube amps, relatively speaking, with those electrostatics could do tremendous bass. And that was an amazing takeaway from that room. And I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But big props to Kevin for providing those amps. Again, it separates. Some companies aren't as friendly to helping out, and some are. Those two companies right off the bat. As well, ASC tube traps. Very impressed with them. I use them myself. And they sent some tube traps to Mike to use. Mike is not a dealer for them and stepped up, and he actually sold the tube traps. The last day, it was a little bit of a compromise because we had to run the room without the tube traps, because one of the, actually it was one of my members that bought the demo special of the ASC tube traps. So big props to them. Also, Snake River was in there and did some custom cabling for Mike Sweck. So I got to see behind the scenes some really things that gave me a very firm confidence of recommending these brands. Also, as a whole, there are other rooms too that I got to see behind the scenes and the day before the show started that now give me even more level of impressiveness with what they do. And right off the cuff is Geshelli. They are amazing with how they took over a whole wing of the hotel and had a theme, a 70s theme. All the banners were custom. The amount of effort it takes to just run one room, the logistics, getting everything there. It takes a well-run operation to do that properly. And to do it for 6 rooms, all the people involved, travel, the cost. You do not understand how much is put into just a few days of customers coming. And really on Sundays, it's a little bit light. So you're focusing on customers for just a short period of time. That's why my style of coverage for YouTube is to try to go into as many rooms as possible, not just isolate it to the big name brands, the ones that I know are going to get the biggest views. I like to showcase everybody because at least my videos will last forever. They're limited with whatever traffic they can come into if no press visits them and puts any content out. I want to support these brands, support the hobby. And I do it at my own detriment because every room I go into is playing music. Guess what happened? I get zero money from any of that. But I have no problems doing that. Will continue to do that no matter what brands I represent. I'm agnostic to what rooms I go into in terms of rooms that I endorse. I will happily go in there. And so Geshelli is thumbs up. What they do is amazing. Fidelity Imports is another one. Again, I got to see them behind the scenes as well with that tour of Italy, all the brands that they represent in Italy, maybe doing some future tours as well from the brands they represent. But man, they impressed me before that even occurred. I was always giving them shout outs in my wrap ups because they run multiple rooms, run them extremely well, very polished, and it takes a big undertaking to do all those brands. And what I really appreciate about Fidelity is they carry such a wide variety of brands and budgets that no matter where you are, you're in good hands if you pick a Fidelity Imports brand. Not everything they carry is going to be for everybody, but you could probably find something in their line. And I'll probably go ahead and give a shout out right now to two pieces. Right here, I have my Primare surround sound processor. I've got a review coming up on that. And actually, two of my friends have already bought them based on my anecdotal feedback. Tremendous quality sound. But you're going to want to wait for my review on that to see if it's right for you. But I'm a big fan of Primare. Also, you got to see from Fidelity Imports the Unison Research S6, I think it was the Black Edition. Now, the Black Edition is what we A/B tested in Italy. Let me tell you, that was very dramatic, the difference when they did the Black Edition. Not a whole lot more cost. Beautiful chassis, family-run operation in Italy, bespoke level type. You can really feel proud of owning a Unison Research piece that's been in business forever. But this Black Edition S6 is a new game changer in that price point. Definitely want to give those two pieces from Fidelity especially a shout out. Also, I'm ignoring one thing. Not only the people and the vendors and the brands, the press is great at this show. All the press is there. And we're talking about the press that I really respect. The guys like Ken McAuliffe, Michael Lavorgna, Tom Marten, Cheap Audio Man was there too. All these guys I got to know really well at the tour of Italy, and I can endorse them. Not so much, you might think, well, okay, because they work for Absolute Sound, they work for Stereophile, they have 200,000 subscribers or whatnot. Actually, those aren't the most impressive things to me about these guys. What I'm especially cognizant with these guys impressed by is that these are guys I know like music. They listen to live music. Ken McAuliffe, great with jazz. Anything jazz related, I'm going to go to him, and he's big into vinyl. You've got guys like Tom Marten, who's taken that magazine and his YouTube channel. He's done great with it ever since he's taken over. He's really providing much higher value reviews than I've ever seen from that magazine. And then Michael Lavorgna, legend in the industry. And Cheap Audio Man. Look, I don't know why the guy gets a bad rap among some sects of the industry. He knows what he's doing, and he focuses on those brands and his level of experience that is perfect for 90% of all audiophiles. I mean, if you want to find highest value budget gear, you need to check out his stuff. I mean, in a lot of cases, he's finding stuff that'll compete with the big boys. Now, we actually had he told me he was going to find a whole system under $1,500, and I was skeptical. But if anybody can do it, he can do it. But then I actually found, I was kind of cognizant as I was going around, there were great options at this show. And maybe I should jump ahead to under 10K systems that I heard in terms of, under a few K. You had the Chesky speaker that was extremely impressive. You had the audience speaker that both Pete and Doug spoke about that was really impressive. But the DC HiFi room had an entire room gear set up that was under like $1,200. Unbelievable. So hopefully Randy found that. But anything in that ilk of price points, you need to check him out. The press there was really good. All the guys that I really respect were there. And actually, Michael Fremer too, I got to give a shout out to him. The day before the show started, we both went out with Mark Dohman and JR to visit this guy's home. He had $1 million worth of turntables, and that's going to be a separate video outside of this Capital Audiofest coverage. I compared a $450,000 turntable to a $300,000+ turntable, same room, same gear. It's almost impossible to get that level of comparison. Who has two turntables of that expense in the same room playing the same track right after each other? I will give you my thoughts on that. It's going to be a special video down the road. Stay tuned for that. Michael Fremer and JR are about the two biggest influencer guys in vinyl. So yeah, that was a great time. Mark Dohman, big shout out to him. I'm going to mention his room later. That is a guy that Doug owns his turntable, the Dohman Helix turntable. Phenomenal guy. First time getting to meet him. I was already impressed with his stuff, but the guy himself, thumbs up. So yeah, that gets into stuff that impressed me outside the actual gear and even sound quality metrics. And I think those are the more important things to take away from this show, frankly, guys. But let's get into gear time and room time. And ultimately, the best of show comes down to, where are you putting your money? You know, I can sit here and say this is the best room or that's a great room, but am I spending my money on it? That's the litmus test you got to see from various reviewers and all. Now, obviously, some gear is, they would love to own it. If, you know, anybody would love to own some of this gear if they won the lottery. So that's cognizant of, you got to be cognizant of budget. But in terms of things that I'm putting my money behind, well, I represent, let me go ahead and get this out the way. And if you can skip ahead if you don't want, I represent Viablue and the Bach and also Blue Jeans Cable. Those are the three I'm a dealer for. So take whatever feedback I give on them. And then what I'm going to go ahead and preview for you guys is that based on what I heard at Capital Audiofest and talking with Mike Sweck and also having Zooms behind the scenes with Popori manufacturers. I've been in on some of these Zooms. I haven't shared them with you. They're private. But I wanted to know a lot more about this speaker. It impressed me a few years ago. And so that's the room I want to talk about first. It does have the Bach in there, which I represent, like I say. But the combination of the two was something that I knew would be applicable to me and something I may spend my money on if I ever were to replace these. These are great speakers. I mean, I obviously have had them for years now, and I see and hear the best. And I'm fortunate enough, if I want to buy something, most things I can afford. But I really haven't heard anything that blows me away. You know, there's always going to be trade-offs. Every speaker is not perfect. But I haven't heard anything that blew me away, other than I've always been a fan of line sources, true line sources, where this is more of a point source array. And, you know, we talk a lot about parts. In fact, Danny does a good job of improving parts and crossovers, and that's been a big topic in the industry recently. But the best parts are zero parts. And the holy grail of loudspeakers has always been an electrostatic, one driver doing everything and not having any parts, not having a crossover. Because as good as you can get these to sound and meld with a crossover to fit, to go flat, there's still overlap if you watch these curves of how the drivers roll off. And so what do you think if this driver here is playing the same frequency as this driver here in the overlap? Not only are they being launched from two different spots, but do you think it's going to sound exactly the same from this kind of driver material and that one? Are they going to be perfectly time aligned once they get to your listening position? There's always trade-offs. And like I said, this has been one of the best trade-offs and best budget speakers I've ever found in terms of competing with anything. But electrostatic that could do everything and even go lower than these go in my room was something that entices me. The Poporis passed the test. This year, you've seen me test Metaxas, Final, and others, Sound Labs, the smaller Sound Labs. And it's always a case where electrostatics, if you're going to get the bass that I need and performance levels I require, they need to be super wide, super tall, and I just don't have room in here. I could probably put them in the other room, but then that's the wife acceptance factor problem there. And most people have that problem. So they haven't been, even though that's the holy grail of speakers and have so many advantages, it's not a speaker that fits lifestyle. And let's face it, when we buy speakers, looks are, I say that should be the top of the list. If you don't like a Tannoy, how it looks, it doesn't matter how it sounds. You're not going to buy it. You're not going to buy a Klipsch Jubilee if you don't like the way it looks, no matter how it sounds. What the speaker looks like and how it fits your decor is extremely important. And so the Poporis delivered both on performance, the electrostatic advantages that I've heard from all the best electrostatics, low bass, as I proved constantly in my demos. And I'm going to have some actual people that were in the demos giving you third-party and future videos coming up. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but because that demo pair is coming to my house, I'm going to have them here. Mike Sweck is sending it to me. My friend Doug is actually wanting to buy them for his Destin condo, but they're going to come here first. And so people putting their money where their mouth is. Doug is buying the Popori. I'm going to be buying what it looks like now, the sail-shaped ones. I'll pop up pictures. It's a prototype at this point. Should be ready by Tampa. And also, he's also sold, as I mentioned in another video, Mike Sweck, just from this weekend, he sold a WR1, which retails for over $60,000, a WR2, which is $34,000. That was in the demo. And then a WR3, which is a smaller one, at $17,800. 3 of those speakers already sold from this weekend. People are putting their money where their mouth is in terms of this is best of show. So when people put their money out, that's got to get an award. So I want to give props to that. And then everybody that bought the Popori also either has the Bach already or is getting the Bach, because as I showed in that presentation that another channel filmed for me, I'll link it for you guys, that was huge. Being able to address the room issues. Those hotel rooms are not good. Even this weekend, we had to live with a ceiling reflection, but we were able to tell where that reflection was coming from because of the in-ear measurements of the Bach. And I'm going to have a lot more on the Bach soon. But anybody that's still against DSP and the Bach, I just don't know. You're going to see some more awards. You got to hear it firsthand, the difference in pink noise sound. It's just a phenomenal product now with the ORC. It's just a no-brainer. But again, I represent that. I don't want to spend too much more time on the Bach. But getting back to budget systems, that really impressed me, other than the ones I already mentioned. What I found, a theme that I'll always remember from this show, is under 10K bookshelf speakers that blew me away. And I hinted at this one in Toronto. I couldn't talk too much about it, but the new Acora bookshelves with the marble and the Acouton drivers, I said what I could say at the time, but I got to spend a lot of time with them in Toronto. And I told Val, frankly, I said, this could cannibalize stuff up your line because it's so good. You're getting so much of the performance of your other stuff. Under 10K, beautiful looking Acouton drivers. And we crashed the demo while Andrew Quint, great reviewer as well, for the Absolute Sound that was there. Great guy. He was actually doing a demo, and even off camera, he was talking about how impressed those speakers were. So for a bookshelf under 10K, that's a new standard setter. I know I've been a big fan as well of the Joseph Audio. I think it's the Pulsars. And then I found another one, really at the very last part of the show. I went into this room, almost missed it. Marten. When I saw the name Marten, I'm very familiar with Marten speakers, but normally it's their bigger ones, and I'm very familiar with that. I almost decided to skip it, but I had a little time, so I went in, and they had bookshelf ones that I've never seen before or heard before, under 10K. And when I heard them play Make Us Stronger, which we had been using as well in the Popori room to kind of showcase how well these can handle bass, I was extremely impressed with these Marten. And that's got a lot of pedigree as well, the Marten speakers and beauty. I would definitely put them under 10K. Bookshelf speakers you got to check out. I love those Martens, okay? So those and the ones by Acora, new arrivals, at least to me, I think you need to check out before you spend much more money. And again, I mentioned the Chesky and the Audience. Those were big fans of those. I think the Audience was a big fan. Both Pete and Doug were big fans of the Audience. I wasn't as enamored with them per se, but because I have a lot of experience, number one, with the source points and also Cabas. So when you're starting to get in that $3,000 price point, then it's a little more tough to call. But when you consider the size profile of that Audience and the quality they were getting, it's definitely, I can see why Doug and Pete enjoyed it a lot as well. And so they do deserve a shout out. And I did mention the DC HiFi gear. Off the cuff, I don't even remember the specific model numbers, but I'll probably pop up the video. Go check that out. Under 12, I think it was $1,200 all in. Major props to them. Another theme of this show, other than the bookshelves under 10K, was field coil speakers. And I've always been a fan of Songer doing their field coils, and I got to hear the bigger model this time, and they sounded great as usual. But there was another arrival on the scene, because field coils in the past have not been anywhere near my favorite. In fact, usually I just assumed that they were going to suck, to be honest with you, because so many times I had not heard a good one until I had heard the Songer one. And they do everything with the driver in-house, so they're doing stuff bespoke. It's not just off the shelf. But this GIP, GIP, I think is how it's pronounced. I should have asked. That actually impressed me. It was very impressive field coil horn, kind of huge speaker. It's not going to be practical for most people's decor and size, but in terms of just from a sound quality perspective and standing out to me as a very impressive field coil, I want to throw their name in the hat as being impressive and something I will remember from this show. And that's part of what I do this video for. Anything that pops out in my mind different than the norm. Well, let's stop talking about other things under 10K, 1200, you know. Let's talk about the ultra high-end stuff, the stuff, if you win the lottery, what would you get? Well, you didn't have to look much further than the Tidal room and the Dohman turntable in that new titanium finish. The two actually look like they were made by the same company. But one thing about Tidal, from their speakers to their electronics, you just know when you see it that it is just jewelry level aesthetics and just perfect. You know, I'm kind of a designer in my own respect in terms of doing clothing lines in the past, and I actually still have my hat line. There's so much that goes into aesthetics that people don't realize that has to resonate with a big core of people. And they are able to present that look that screams high end before you even listen. Just looking at it, it feels and looks like a piece of high end, bespoke, truly something you can covet owning. So I love their electronics, love their speaker finish. You can't get better, really. And then Dohman turntable, my friend Doug owns it. Steve McCormick puts it among his best. JR loves it. The gentleman in California, the $1 Million System, he has one. Rick Brown has one. And now I got to meet Mark Dohman. That's a turntable that even Doug was lusting after that titanium finish compared to his. So that's something you have to check out. Look at that video, and it sounded great in that room. Another always ultra high-end brand that delivers at these shows is MBL. And again, that type of speaker, omnidirectional, will be to certain taste profiles more attractive than others. But if you just listen to regular music, after hours, off axis, like I did at this show, I mainly focused on the after hours stuff because that's another thing where here's a brand, MBL, that separates themselves. They work all day, and that's tiring running a room. But then they'll go all night, past midnight, running the room as well, playing anything on the United Home Audio decks. Another shout out to Greg and his tape decks. This is something that deserves special treatment, special mention. People that can do that. And the MBLs, off axis, on axis, they just provide an enjoyment level where people don't get up. People are tapping their toes. They're dancing. They're having a good time. And that's really what it's all about. You can sit there and nitpick and write some notes about this not being perfect or that not being perfect for what you're used to or what your taste profile is. But the litmus test is most people don't get up out of that seat for the MBL room and they enjoy the music. So shout out to Jeremy and them. Also at the ultra high-end level at price point, I got to give a shout out to YG, who's really, this has been their year. I thought I hadn't seen them in shows for a while, but then this year, from March back in the Dallas show, they were everywhere. This show, I think they had 6 to 8 rooms, something like that. And they're doing the active stuff now. I think they're partnering with Bel Canto to do the internals. This is impressing me. And their driver technology. I did the video that Carl shot at their facility tour. I'm going to be doing a Zoom interview with Duncan at YG because I want to learn more. I want to give props to a company that's at that highest level that is doing this active stuff, taking the hobby and kind of pushing it. Hey, we got to get out of the antiquated days of not active and go for highest levels of performance, and also fitting the new lifestyle, which is not having these monster amps with big heat sinks and, you know, cables everywhere. I think people are starting to appreciate not only the performance advantages, but the aesthetic advantages. Now, they did have that new one that Doug and Pete really enjoyed. I think it was a 2.3, and it had the MTM part really high in the air. I think that was too big for that room because it felt like I was listening to a shelf of performers up high. It didn't bother Pete and Doug that much, but that speaker is meant for a much bigger room than those hotel rooms. So once you are back, then it would integrate a lot better. And from what I understand, they stopped tilting it down for better measurement purposes. So I'd love to hear those in the proper size room for them. But you were able to sniff enough potential of that new YG that, you know, it's in one of the rooms here. And the prior model is in one of the rooms, homes here in Houston that I featured. Still one of the best in all of Houston that I've heard. So props to them. Now let's get to some more reasonable budget systems that I feel very comfortable recommending to you. They're not going to be for everybody. They're going to be different taste profiles, both on looks and sound that you may or not like. But I feel comfortable with the people behind it, how they set up the room, and I can see why people buy each of these brands. And number one, Alta and Infigo. Now that is a little bit pricey, but what they're doing with their chassis, beautiful. And they're always setting up great rooms at these shows. Very friendly people, the type of people I can endorse. And I just love the looks of their gear, and it always sounds good. And them and the Alta speakers, very impressive every time I've heard them. Then a little bit lesser price, you know, when we're talking about under 10,000, you want to go open baffle, you got to look at that Maco now, single driver. You know, you want to talk about another way to get the advantages I was talking about with electrostatics. Well, you can do those single driver, Lisong driver type speakers like the Maco is, and it's basically one driver carrying most of the load, and then a bass driver, almost a quasi sub, handling just the low frequency stuff. So that Wizard Cone and that type of driver is not for everybody. So you have to audition it. But in terms of the people behind it, the beautiful finish of the Maco, I just want that in my home just to look at. And actually, they just offered me a chance to, when I get my Airbnb, to send me a pair to demonstrate and show people in Texas, because they don't have any customers yet down here, and people can get to hear. And I said, yeah, send me one. I'd love to feature it in the Airbnb. And we were kind of talking about doing a custom paint finish for my taste. So I sent them a Shelby, 65 Shelby, the blue and white stripe, and see if they would do that with the custom paint job. And they were all on board with it. So stay tuned if that may occur, maybe early, mid 2025. Stay tuned on that. Big shout out to Maco. Also, always, Odyssey. You know, if you got whatever money you're spending, you got to look and see what Klaus is doing with his amps, and especially those speakers. Remember, in that video, you saw, not only you saw Frimmer come in and bomb the demo, which was great. He brought one of his albums. We got to listen to Frimmer's album that he helped produce or is on the credits of. But also part of that, don't miss the other part of that video where we're talking about those speakers that are really giant killers for the price, but the drivers that they make for them, there's a limited supply left. So he's got a limited supply before he pivots to something else. If you want to get that sound and that price point, definitely check out what Odyssey is doing. He always sets up the room better than almost anybody else. I mean, he just knows how to handle, in particular, that room he says is his favorite of all the shows, and I would agree. It is just the perfect size. He sets it up perfectly. The ambience is great. I think plus or minus 100 candles in there. So it's a really fun room. He's a fun guy. So make sure when you're spending money, look at what Odyssey is doing, because they give you a lot of value. And on that same level, Margules, who does everything. It's overlooked as a company because they're from Mexico. Some people don't know about it as well, but they do everything from speakers to electronics to even power conditioners and servers. This is a company, it's not easy to do all that stuff, first of all, and they do it at a super high level. Beautiful, unique styling, not just a Me Too look, trying to copy other people's looks. When you see a Margules piece, you know it's a Margules piece. And the people behind it, I love those people. I was invited to come out to their facility. Potentially, there is a show in Mexico in December. I don't know if I can make it, but one day I will make it to their facility, guaranteed, and I can give them thumbs up in the interim. No matter, I know what I'm going to see there is going to be very impressive. Now, getting back to electrostatics, this another theme, a takeaway from this show is how many electrostatics there were there. High quality ones, because you had the Sound Labs, the ones that kind of were similar to what got me originally. I heard at Duke Lejeune's place, he lived in New Orleans, and he was a dealer for Sound Labs when the original Sound Labs A1s, I think it was, huge, wide panel. Those were among the best speakers I've ever heard. But it took a lot of power. They were massive, big price tag. Never could afford them at that time and just can't fit them. But now they're still doing speakers, and they brought these 9-foot tall ones and massive panels. And yeah, that is a phenomenal speaker. So Sound Labs, props to them and Dr. Vinyl, who ran that room. He also, Dr. Vinyl had the only, he told me this was the only DS audio with a new phonostage with the tubes in it. So props to him on that. Also, another room where I probably will be putting my money where my mouth is whenever I get a turntable is the Bird of Prey tone arm from the Robyatt room. And on top of that, he did a great demo for me with different tracks, both digital and analog on the quads. And again, these are a little bit wider. You know, they wouldn't fit here. But they have a nice price point of around $12,000 if you've got the room for those quads and you've always been a fan of quads in the past. They are definitely killer. Now, they don't have the tall line source type presentation like a Marten Logan, Sound Labs, the Poporis, but the bass in there was more than plentiful enough, very impressive. And so if you like electrostatics, those quads, and you like the looks, those are ones to put on the list, both them and Sound Labs. And again, I'm partial right now, the Popori, that's what I'm going to be trying, but do the sleek profile and everything combined. But I can see easily where people might enjoy the Sound Labs and the quads too. And then circling back, I didn't want to go too overboard with Bach because I represent them and whatnot, but DSP is still the hit of these shows now. More and more are realizing digital crossovers are far superior. Active crossovers to your subs are far superior that are in the digital domain. But Danville Signal Processing, Hollis Audio Labs, did a presentation. You got to watch that. I got in there and they did a quick demo for me, A-Being with Magnapans with their stock crossover, then they're using DSP and the subs. It was so easy to hear. It may not be as easy to hear on YouTube because YouTube doesn't typically get that low bass. My camera phone is probably the problem, capturing all of that stuff. But it was so easy. You could hear the anecdotal feedback, not just from me, of people in the room, how DSP can improve anything if it's done right. That's the thing. Almost everybody's antagonism toward DSP is because they've done it wrong. They've used it wrong. If you use it correctly, you use it properly, you use the state-of-the-art stuff that is available now, it will guarantee better performance on high fidelity metrics, or if you just want to taste. Because no matter how many room treatments, as great as ASC tube traps are, I can't tune it to 3 dB in the, do a curve like a BBC monitor, all these different curves that people enjoy. You cannot tailor it with just room treatments alone. And a speaker designer, you will never have the same ears as that speaker designer and where they voiced it in their reference room and their reflections and what they heard. You're not going to ever be in total sync with a designer. DSP now allows you, and the Bach allows you to do it automatically, what's in your ear. But with the Danville signal processing, you want to start with that level of just DSP and using the Maggies like they did. That's a game changer right off the bat. You don't have to buy new speakers. Buy the DSP, use it correctly, get the help from people that know how to use it correctly. You will improve your system more than spending even $1 million. Because so many of these $1 million systems, guess what? At the listening position, they don't measure any better and sometimes worse. So we have to get over this antagonism towards digital. Nobody anymore, when we're doing these A/B demos, saying, oh, that sounds like digititis or this, that, and the other. No, that's all in their head or preconditioned. If we blindfold people, almost everybody can hear the tangible improvements now that can be done with DSP. So I want to give a shout out to Danville Signal Processing. And this is at 30 minutes of, so I'm going to call it quits here, but give a shout out to all the rooms I went into. I really didn't hear anything bad. The new Magnapans at that new price point, 7.5K, that was a little head scratcher to me. But in terms of sound quality and all that, the typical Magnapan quality, that could be a winner for a lot of people. But it's an interesting direction that they're taking, and I think they're doing two different directions with the company now to see what resonates with customers. So time will tell on that. But really, in my membership section, I do have another video of a couple rooms that didn't really stand out, but I don't like to publicly call out rooms for anything I hear in a short burst, because that's not indicative of the whole weekend. It's not indicative of other people's opinions. And I don't want something permanently on the internet for just a short excerpt. Now, if any room or any people consistently show me something that's poor, I am not afraid to call it out. And I'm not afraid to question things. I want to give a major, on that note, an ending note, a major award to IsoAcoustics. I did the other video where I filmed before hours their demo. From an accessory standpoint, I've never heard as big an A/B difference as I did with Toronto, but there was some, in my mind, sounded like out of phase. But this time they told me, come back, do whatever I wanted before hours. And you saw in that video, if you haven't watched it, make sure you watch it so you can make a decision for yourself. The delta is still huge. It's with the pink noise, which is a microscope on the entire frequency response. It's easily, you would pass an A/B test 1,000 out of 1,000 times. It's so obvious. And so, and it wasn't out of phase this time. We did the phase test, everything. Very impressive. They're going to be sending me some stuff to test in my own home that with my gear. So stay tuned for a lot of that. But this is how companies should respond to any questions, any kind of extra scrutiny. I was very impressed with IsoAcoustics, how they responded to my videos and my questions. And again, this is how I like to take the hobby, is when you see something that you don't know or have questions about, or even stuff you don't like, I think we can do this in a much more professional attitude with the reviewers interacting with the people. I actually did that as well with Mark Levinson. If you remember, I questioned some of his patent stuff, but we got together and kind of had a Zoom where he admitted some things and gave us a perspective of why he may have gone overboard in certain areas. This is what I want as a takeaway and a part of the ethos of my channel, is more than just giving you gear recommendations, sound quality, jargon, and all that stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed. If so, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon.